Welcome to the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show with Corey and Justin. Here they are, the Fourth and Long Fantasy Brothers.
Welcome to the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. My name is Corey, and I'm here with my actual brother, Justin.
Hi, this is Justin.
Justin, we've got our mock draft special today. Looking forward to that. But before we do, what is going on with the Indianapolis Colts?
There's a black rain cloud over the Colts organization over these last couple of days, man. News broke recently that Carson Wentz is going to have foot surgery, out a pretty vague 5 to 12 weeks. And the news just broke today on Tuesday that Quenton Nelson, the all-pro guard, is going to be out with the same injury. 5 to 12 week timeline again for Quenton Nelson. It's a big blow to this offense, Corey, right? I mean, it certainly is. There's no way to sugarcoat it. I'm just curious what your initial quick, rapid reaction to those injuries are and how it might have an impact on the offense as a whole.
Yeah, Justin, I would say that Carson Wentz was clearly going to make this offense fantasy viable if any quarterback was. You're not going to get me excited about a second-string quarterback taking over this offense. The 5 to 12 week time frame, boy, that's about as broad as you can get when it comes to an expectation of when he'll be back. I'll be monitoring it. I'll be very aware. It's definitely something that I'm not sure where I land on it yet because it's just so general. But yeah, not a good start for the Colts. Justin, I'm just curious. When injury news like this comes down, right? I mean, what do? We're getting a lot of it right now. People are pulling up lame in practice. We've got players who are, leaving early. There's reports that, players are missing. What do you find valuable at this time? What news are you paying attention to? Is there any news you're ignoring?
Corey, it's certainly that time at training camp now where you're going to see guys pull up limp with muscle strains, hamstring pulls, right, whatever it might be. And I try not to overreact until I hear from the team, from team doctors, a firm timetable around the injury and what's going to happen here, right? We talked about Carson Wentz and Quenton Nelson, right? And their timetables, although they're broad, there is a timetable there, and you have to adjust your rankings and your sort of outlook on that offense as a whole, given the fact that they will be out for a concrete set of time. Injuries like we've seen over the last couple of days, whether it's to, Tyreek Hill or to Kenny Golladay or, Dak Prescott, right? Until the team issues some guidance around if there's going to be any missed time, especially as we get closer and closer here to the regular season. I'm not overreacting, right? It's common this time of the year as players get back into their full swing of activity, getting prepared for the season. You can't overreact, Corey.
Yeah, Justin, I agree with you there. I think that's a good idea. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, though, because early, sometimes training camp injuries can linger into the season. Sometimes they don't, though. So it can be a toss-up. It's just definitely something to monitor. Well, Justin, it's time for some mock drafting. And with that said, let's get to it.
On today's show.
All right, Justin, it's our mock draft special. And before we get into things this year, I want to talk about how we did last year, because this is our second mock draft. Last year, we did a mock draft around this time, and let's talk about the team that we came up with. I'm pretty happy, Justin, looking at this team from last year. Our quarterback was Matt Stafford. I imagine we probably would have shifted and pivoted to a different quarterback throughout the season if that was our team, but our running backs, Dalvin Cook, who can't be upset about that. Josh Jacobs, even though people are down on him this year, he was a really, really good running back last year for fantasy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we know he had his ups and his downs, but we also had David Johnson. We had Ronald Jones. We had Darius Geis before Darius Geis was no longer a thing. And we had Madison backing up Cook just in case. That's a great running back crew. And then we had some really solid wide receivers to go along with it. We had Adam Thielen, who had a great year. And then, Justin, we had the wide receiver to own, Stefon Diggs, as our wide receiver 2. Obviously became our surefire wide receiver 1 throughout the year. We also had Jamison Crowder and Brandin Cooks out there to help us out on our wide receiver needy times. And Hunter Henry was our tight end. Pretty consistent last year as a tight end as far as tight ends go. We may have pivoted and picked someone else up at a certain time, but that's a really, really nice team, Justin. I'm pretty happy with how that looks, 1 year later.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that mock draft worked out last year, looking back at some of those picks we made, especially guys like Stefon Diggs, Josh Jacobs, Adam Thielen. Those are pretty good picks we made. They ended up panning out here for the season. But I think it just further justifies, right, that you should remain active all year. We probably would have been moving guys on and off of our roster throughout the course of the year. So, after you draft, don't get married to your roster, right? Continue to be active and make moves throughout the season.
Yeah, and it's nice to know, right? We did this mock draft early. We're doing it again early, right? No real league should be drafting this early, but it's a good time to do it because now's about the time when you want to start getting mock drafts done and get the feel for what your draft board might look like in a few weeks when you're doing your actual league drafts.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Justin, why don't we get things started? Before we do, why don't you talk about the setup that we're going to do for this draft?
Yeah, Corey, I'll echo your comments there around mock drafting. It's incredibly important, especially as we approach the fantasy football season, right? Practice makes perfect, and being able to come out and mock draft a couple times before you actually get to your real fantasy football draft is really important, right? It gets you to understand where players are landing, right? Their ADP, their average draft position, and it gives you a better understanding of kind of where guys are going, right? Which guys you might have to reach for if you really want them, and which guys you can wait on a little bit, position and player-wise. So we're going to be using the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard software here. Really fun software to use for mock drafting. It allows you to set your league settings. In this instance, we're going to be doing a 10-team league, a half PPR scoring, pretty standard roster construction, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, no defense or kicker, and 6 bench spots. So we're going to go ahead and randomize the draft position here, Corey.
All right, Justin, go ahead and hit that randomize button. Let's see what position out of 10 we are going to be drafting from. Justin has made the click, and we will be drafting from the 7th position this year. I don't hate it. So, Justin, with that said, let's get things started. Let's get this draft underway, and let's see who's going to be available at the 7th pick. You imagine maybe we might be able to get one of those high-end running backs, or maybe one of those high-end top 3 wide receivers might be something we want to pursue. So off the board, right off the bat, we had Christian McCaffrey go number 1, Dalvin Cook go 2, Derrick Henry 3, Alvin Kamara 4, Zeke Elliott 5, Saquon Barkley 6. It was a run on all running backs. So the options are open to us, Justin. We can go with one of the top tier running backs who are remaining, or we can take a wide receiver 1 if we want to. What do you think?
Yeah, no surprises here with the first 6 picks of the draft. I think you're going to see these 6 running backs kind of go 1 through 6 in any sort of order you want to put them in, but no real surprises here. As I look at pick number 7, right? Before Aaron Rodgers returned back to Green Bay, my gut would have said to stay away from Davante Adams, but I think he just clear and above offers the highest upside of any wide receiver. I think Rodgers is going to absolutely pepper him in this offense this year, Corey. I think I want to go with Davante Adams here at pick number 7.
So, Justin, I would have been okay with Adams or Nick Chubb or Aaron Jones in this range. I'd really be okay with any of them. I'm gonna say let's go with Davante Adams. Let's shore up that wide receiver 1. Let's see if a nice running back can fall to us in the 2nd round.
Totally agree. Let's see who goes.
So after Adams, we had Jonathan Taylor, Travis Kelce, the very first tight end off the board. There went Nick Chubb. Austin Eckler went. Antonio Gibson goes after that. And then Tyreek Hill. So, Justin, one of the guys I mentioned is still available. Is it Aaron Jones time right now?
I don't know, Corey. I mean, as much as I'd like to take Jones here, and he seems like the best value at the position that we have, do we really want to stack the offense of the Packers? It's not necessarily a terrible offense to stack here. I don't know if I feel necessarily all that comfortable in taking 2 Packers back to back.
So, Justin, what do you think then? If we're not going to go with Aaron Jones, who else do you like that's still left on the board?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I like Joe Mixon, but I feel like it'd be a disservice to take Joe Mixon over Aaron Jones with the upside that Aaron Jones offers. I mean, Corey, let's go crazy here, man. Let's just go with the 2 Packers and bank on this offense being as good as it was last year. I think I'm going to go Aaron Jones here with this pick. Just shore up the running back 1 position.
Yeah, I think 2nd round is great value for Aaron Jones. So I have no problem with it, even with both our guys being on Green Bay.
Let's do it.
All right, so there's going to be a big run of players after Aaron Jones, and it's going to be Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Patrick Mahomes, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, George Kittle, and Darren Waller. The next 2 tight ends are off the board. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and now it is up to us. We have some options. We have our number 1 wide receiver. We have our number 1 running back. There's a lot of flexibility we have here, and there are a lot of intriguing options on the board.
Yeah, Corey, I feel like at this point, I don't want to wait on running back all that much, right? I feel like out of the running backs that are left here on the board, I feel pretty comfortable with the guy like David Montgomery, Chris Carson, maybe a guy like J.K. Dobbins. I don't know, though. I feel like taking a guy like Keenan Allen here in the third round, who's got, especially in half PPR, 100 catch upside, playing with a young quarterback. I mean, we could solidify both of our wide receiver positions by grabbing a guy like Keenan Allen, who's all but guaranteed to be top 12 at the position this year.
Yeah, Justin, I like that pick. I wouldn't even hesitate on it, honestly. And I love setting up our wide receiver group that way.
Let's do it and hope that one of these other running backs makes their way back for our fourth round pick.
So after Keenan Allen goes off the board, we're going to see a running back go in J.K. Dobbins. Then we see Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, and Julio Jones. A bunch of wide receivers go off the board. So we still see that other than J.K. Dobbins, there's a decent amount of those running backs still left in that position. But there are some really intriguing wide receivers still out there if we want to fill up our flex spot already. Justin, where do you want to go now?
I feel like we can't let the running back position go here in the fourth round because we've got so many picks to go here, right? And that's one of the big things here when you're drafting is you have to be aware of where you're drafting, who's drafting around you, right? How long it's going to be until you come back around to your next pick. And it's going to be a while, Corey, until we pick again. And I feel like if we don't go with a guy like DeAndre Swift or David Montgomery or Chris Carson, that we're most likely going to miss out on that next running back. And we might be in pretty dire straits here for our RB2. So I'm leaning between either DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, or Chris Carson, one of those three. And I think, honestly, if I'm going to lean towards any of them, I'm going to slightly lean on the Chris Carson side. But I feel like DeAndre Swift is such a good value here in the third round, in the fourth round, Corey. What do you think?
Yeah, Justin, I'm going to throw one more out there that I really like it for a running back. And I think his value so bad this year. But Josh Jacobs is a, that's a former RB1 you're talking about who's just sitting out there right now in the fourth round. And I know Kenyon Drake's there, but I think it would be a disservice if we didn't talk about a guy who is still, I think, capable of putting up RB1 numbers.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good call too, right? I mean, I feel like all of these guys make up a tier here that you could justify really any of them at this pick here in the fourth round. I think, Corey, if I'm going to be leaning towards any of them at this position in the fourth round, I think I'm going to go with, oh boy, I think I'm going to go with Chris Carson here in the fourth round. I think he might be the best pick here.
Let's do it then. That's a great RB2 to have is Seattle's Chris Carson.
I'm going to take him here in the fourth round.
So after Carson, we're going to see a lot more go. It's Amari Cooper, DeAndre Swift, Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders, David Montgomery. After Montgomery, it was Josh Jacobs, Chris Godwin, Robert Woods, Mark Andrews, Josh Allen, DJ Moore, and then Cooper Kupp. So a lot of the skill positions have flown off the board. We have some more options now, Justin. We have our RB1, we have our RB2, we have our wide receiver 1 and our wide receiver 2. We can either keep filling out those skill positions or fill in other places. What do you think?
I really like the idea of having a guy like Deontay Johnson here in the fifth round, right? I mean, I think he's got the upside, especially in half PPR, to be a high catch guy, right, in this high-powered Steelers offense. We've also got the option of going with a potentially game-breaking sort of overall fantasy number one player in Kyler Murray. But I think, Corey, we're going to stick with the mantra that we've always stuck with, and that's with waiting on the quarterback position. So I think we can pretty confidently cross Kyler Murray off of our boards here. So it really comes down to, do we want to add another running back here to our group and grab, maybe a guy like Darrell Henderson, Myles Gaskin, maybe Mike Davis, Travis Etienne, or do we go ahead and solidify our flex spot here with a guy like Deontay Johnson? Maybe we go for a guy like Kenny Golladay, not necessarily how confident I feel about that. I'm leaning Deontay Johnson here, Corey, for the Steelers.
So, Justin, I would say let's go Deontay because I'm a fan of him. He's someone who I think I'm going to have on every team. He should be on our mock draft team then as well.
Totally agree. I think he's got a lot of upside this year, especially if he can correct the drop issue we had last year. He's going to get fed in the Steelers offense. I think he'll be a very, very solid flex option for us in this draft.
So we'll swing around again with round 6 pretty quickly. We saw Kyler Murray go off the board, Tyler Lockett, Brandon Ayuk goes, TJ Hawkinson goes, Darrell Henderson goes, and then Michael Thomas, the injured Saints receiver, ends up going in the 6th round here. Again, our options are open. We can continue to add at the skill positions, or there is still another quarterback out there who's kind of appealing.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson in the 6th round is interesting, especially given the positional advantage that he can offer. But I think I'm going to stick with the idea, Corey, that we're going to hold on quarterback and continue to load up on skill position players. Let's just do a quick look at the running back position and who we've got left here. We've got guys like Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, Kareem Hunt, ETN, Chase Edmonds, Melvin Gordon, Raheem Mostert, Damian Harris, and then Javonte Williams. We've also got on the wide receiver side, Kenny Galladay, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham Jr., Cortland Sutton, Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, and DJ Chark Jr., Corey. I think if I'm leaning in any way, I think I want to go running back here. And honestly, I think I want to give us another guy that could potentially fill in that RB2 position if something happens to Chris Carson, gives us some weekly stability at the position. I think I'm leaning Kareem Hunt, Corey, here, given what he can do in that Cleveland Brown offense.
Yeah, and I would say Kareem Hunt is the most talented of the group, right? You have like Myles Gaskin and Mike Davis, guys who are atop the depth chart right now, but aren't necessarily guys that'll blow you away. Kareem Hunt's a special running back. I would love having him on our team.
I think he's the safe choice here, especially given the fact that we're going to need another running back for a bye week. And if something was to happen to Chris Carson, he does have a history of injuries. We could very easily and very confidently plug Kareem Hunt in our RB2 spot and feel pretty good about it week in and week out. I'm going to pick Kareem Hunt here in the 6th round.
I like that, Justin. Let's load up with Kareem Hunt. And then after Hunt goes, we're going to see a lot of guys. Dak goes. Odell Beckham goes. Kenny Galladay end up winning after him. After Galladay, it went Myles Gaskin, then Lamar Jackson, Kyle Pitts, the rookie tight end. Russell Wilson goes in the 7th round. T. Higgins, Chase Claypool, James Robinson, Jamar Chase. Cortland Sutton goes, and now it's up to us again. We have some options here again, Justin. There are still some running backs who are sort of in that same tier that we talked about. There are some other wide receiver options out there as well. What are we thinking we want to do here?
Let's look at our team really quickly here. So we've got our running back 1 is Aaron Jones. We've got Chris Carson as our RB2. We've got Davante Adams and Keenan Allen filling out our 2 wide receiver spots and Deontay Johnson in our flex. We then have Kareem Hunt on our bench to kind of be a plug-and-play guy in our flex position or a running back 2 position, Corey. If I'm looking at who's out there right now, it's a pretty decent group of running backs in this zone of running backs that we could potentially load up on. I mean, you're looking at guys like ETN, Edmonds, Melvin Gordon, Raheem Mostert, Damian Harris available at the running back position. If we look at the wide receiver position, we've got guys like Juju, DJ Chark, Robbie Anderson, Tyler Boyd, Jerry Jeudy, Deebo Samuel, and Brandin Cooks. Corey, what are you thinking here? I mean, do we maybe go with another wide receiver? Do we maybe try to grab one of these running backs, maybe a guy like Travis Etienne for the upside? What are you thinking?
Yeah, Justin, I really like either Mike Davis or Travis Etienne here. I know I just trashed Davis a little bit on our last pick because I figured he was, a little early for a 6th round, but this guy is not necessarily someone who you should scoff at, especially at this value. 7th round is really, really good. I wouldn't hate Travis Etienne either, especially if he's going to be riding the bench early on our fantasy team. This is an investment pick and a guy who could really become a special player.
And I'm surprised to see him go after James Robinson. James Robinson went 3 picks ahead of this pick here at 704. I think the value in ETN is pretty evident here. I think in the 7th round, almost 2 to 3 rounds later than where ETN's normally going, I think ETN, Corey, is my pick here. To your point, he can ride our bench, right, for the first couple weeks if he really emerges and he's a game-breaking sort of, PPR-driven asset. I think he could be a league winner for us down the road. I'm going to go with Travis Etienne here in the 7th round.
Go ahead. All right. After ETN, let's see who ends up falling to us for the 8th round. We have Mike Davis go right after ETN. Then Aaron Rodgers and Justin Herbert go as quarterbacks right after that. Leonard Fournette starts off the 8th round. Chase Edmonds. And then Juju Smith-Schuster. So, again, a lot of options for us. We still have our quarterback and tight end positions available, but that skill position load up is usually a valuable thing to keep doing even into the 8th round. Justin, there's a lot of interesting players out here. There's a lot of players who can do quite well for our teams. What are you thinking right now?
Yeah, this is an interesting spot because there's still a good amount of running backs out here that I think that we could potentially target with our next pick if they're still there, right? I mean, I like the idea of taking a guy like Damian Harris or Ronald Jones or Javonte Williams. I like the upside potential of those running backs. But we look at the wide receiver position, right? We've got guys like DJ Chark, Robbie Anderson, Tyler Boyd, Jerry Jeudy, Deebo Samuel, Brandin Cooks. Corey, I like the possibility of having a guy like either Tyler Boyd or Deebo Samuel here. I think both of them offer pretty comfortable and pretty safe floors at this position. I think the 8th round is pretty fair value for those 2 guys. What do you think?
So Justin, I really like the idea because I'm of the mindset that none of these wide receivers really blow me away. So I'm more of the mindset that I would love to see at the running back position here. And I'm a big fan of guys like Damian Harris, Ronald Jones. There's a lot of really appealing guys that are still out there right now in the running back position. I would love to continue to shore that up.
I think that's a really good call. I think we can maybe take another running back or two and then just shore up the rest of our bench with wide receiver dart throws that could potentially emerge. So, and I think that's the right idea, right? I mean, shore up on the running back position as early as you can, take as many of them as you can, and then take those dart throws at the end of the draft at wide receivers, guys that you may end up dropping and, playing the wire with. I totally get it, Corey. I think let's grab, if I'm looking at running backs here and we are half PPR, right? I don't necessarily know that Damian Harris is going to be totally involved in the passing game. So I'm going to lean Ronald Jones, Corey. I know he's got a soft spot in your heart. Let's grab Rojo and put him on our bench, and hopefully he takes that Tampa Bay job.
Yeah, you're not going to get any fight from me there. So I'm happy to see Ronald Jones on our team right now.
I love it, especially after Leonard Fournette too. That's great.
Go ahead, take that again.
Yeah, and especially after Leonard Fournette, Corey. I think the value's there if he's going after Leonard Fournette.
I agree with you, Justin. Now, after Rojo, we saw DJ Chark, Jalen Hurts, Davante Smith, Deebo Samuel, Robbie Anderson, David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, Dallas Goedert, Jerry Jeudy, Tyler Boyd, Brandon Cooks, Raheem Mostert all go off the board. It's starting to get slim out there. The pickings are not great right now, Justin. Is it time for us to go with a quarterback or a tight end, or do we keep loading up at that wide receiver position because running back's looking pretty good for us right now?
Yeah, I think I want to still hold on quarterback because there's still some guys out there like Tom Brady, Tannehill, Stafford, Burrow, right? Lawrence. There's still guys out there that I like at the quarterback position. Tight end position is getting a little thin here, right? I mean, you're looking at guys like Noah Fant, Robert Tonyan, Logan Thomas, Tyler Higbee, Herb Smith, Jonnu Smith, right? I mean, you're looking at a pretty thin position here, but I don't necessarily know that we want to reach on a guy like Noah Fant when we still have guys out there at the running back position like Javonte Williams and Damian Harris who are still out there. Let's look at our roster really quickly here, Corey. We've got 3 more bench spots, a tight end and a quarterback. We've got 3 running backs filling out our bench spots already with Rojo, Etienne, and Hunt, along with Carson and Jones. I think we pivot here and go wide receiver heavy, wait on the tight end position, wait on the quarterback position. Let's go look at those wide receivers. Let's see what we got out here. Yeah, so I'm thinking, I mean, if I'm looking at this group here, I mean, in the 9th round, I think there's a lot of upside for a guy like Antonio Brown here. We could take the shot at him and see if maybe he becomes that, 5 or 6 catch for 75 yards sort of wide receiver in that Tampa Bay offense.
Yeah, Justin, another consistent guy that I like that's available right now is Jarvis Landry, a guy who's never really all that fancy, but just is always usually pretty consistent. And if Beckham has any limitations, which, he has, he could be a really good value in this round too. So I'm good with AB or Jarvis Landry at this point.
Yeah, let's go with the better offense here, at least on paper, and let's go with Tampa Bay. Let's go with Antonio Brown here in the 9th round.
Sounds good. So after Antonio Brown, we are going to see another slew of running backs go off the board. It's Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. Will Fuller goes after that, then Damian Harris, Jarvis Landry, and then Noah Fant. So now, Justin, it's either wide receiver as we've decided, or are we going to go quarterback or tight end?
Yeah, this is really getting to the point of the draft where you've got to start to, grab those high upside picks, right? Start to address the positions that you haven't necessarily addressed, over the course of your draft so far. If I'm looking at the board here, I think we're good on running back, right? I mean, Trey Sermon is interesting, but I don't necessarily know that we need another running back. Looking at the wide receivers, we've got guys like Laviska Shenault, Mike Williams, Michael Gallup, Corey Davis, Devontae Parker, Marquise Brown, Michael Pittman, and Marvin Jones Jr. This is tough, Corey. Tight end, we've got Tonyan, Thomas, Higbee. I really like a guy like maybe potentially Tyler Higbee late. So maybe we can wait on that. And then we still got enough quarterbacks out there where I think we can wait on that position as well. I think I'm going to lean on the wide receiver side, Corey. And I think let's grab the guy who can be, I guess you could call him the handcuff to our wide receiver 2 in Keenan Allen. I like the idea of grabbing Mike Williams, who could even have standalone value in this Chargers offense. Yeah,
Justin, I like Mike Williams right now. And again, I agree. He could probably have standalone value. So Justin, we're going to go with Mike Williams to continue to add to our wide receiver depth. And then after Mike Williams went, we saw a lot of running backs go, actually. I mean, first we start off with Tonyan, who was the next tight end off the board. But then it was right after that, Trey Sermon, Kenyon Drake, Zach Moss, and James Conner as running backs. There was one break with Laviska Shenault, who finished out round 10. Then round 11 ended up being Gus Edwards, A.J. Dillon, Devin Singletary, Nyheim Hines, Latavius Murray, and Tony Pollard, all in the 11th round. I think we're going to break that trend, Justin. We're not going to go running back. Are we going to finish up with our last wide receiver bench, or is it time to get our quarterback and tight end?
I think, Corey, at this point, the 11th round, I mean, you see Tom Brady still out there in the 11th round, a guy who has, potentially top 5 upside in this Tampa Bay offense's second year at the helm here with Tampa. I'm leaning Tom Brady, Corey, as our quarterback in the 11th round. Seems like a steal.
I wouldn't even hesitate, Justin. Let's get Tom Brady, and we know we have a pretty consistent QB1 right there.
Totally agree.
So after Brady, we see Jamal Williams go, Tevin Coleman, Tariq Cohen, Marquise Hollywood Brown, Elijah Moore, Logan Thomas as the next tight end goes off the board. 2 more picks left, Justin. Are we going with our tight end, or are we getting our last wide receiver to fill out our bench?
Let's see who's out there for wide receivers, Corey. We can maybe take a shot at one of these young guys here. We've got Curtis Samuel still out there. He's fallen pretty far. He's at least in this rankings, a whole tier above the rest of them, but there is the concern around his lingering injury. So not really sure we want to necessarily go there, but we've got guys like Michael Gallup, Corey Davis, Davante Parker, Michael Pittman Jr., Marvin Jones Jr., Jalen Waddle, Darnell Mooney, T.Y. Hilton, and then Mecole Hardman, Cole Beasley, and Henry Ruggs, Corey. If I'm looking at this group, I think I'm leaning just slightly towards, let's go for the unknown. Let's go for the guy that could be a potential Tyreek Hill clone. I'm thinking we go Jalen Waddle here, Corey, with our last pick.
At the end of our bench, I don't mind it, Justin. And honestly, at this point, I don't care what tight end we get. I am going to hope that Tyler Higbee stays out there for that last round because I'd love him at this point. But I'm good with Waddle for sure. I think that's a good pick right now.
I'm going to go ahead and grab Waddle here and see what happens. Hopefully Tyler Higbee makes it back to us here with our last pick.
If not, there's plenty of tight ends to choose from. Justin and I always usually prescribe to the wait on tight end situation. And let's see what ended up happening in between our times of picking Jalen Waddle. What happened is Phillip Lindsay went off the board, Curtis Samuel, Davante Parker, Corey Davis, J.D. McKissick, Ryan Tannehill goes. Then Michael Gallup. Tyler Higbee did not make it to us. He ended up going at the second pick of the 13th round. Cole Beasley, Joe Burrow, Matt Stafford, Blake Jarwin. And now it is time for our last pick. We have a lot of tight ends to choose from. Not a lot of them are very exciting. Justin, who are you thinking you want to go with here at tight end?
So let's just recap the position here. We've got guys like Mike Gesicki, Irv Smith Jr., Jonnu Smith, Evan Ingram, Rob Gronkowski, Hunter Henry, Cole Kmet, Adam Troutman, Austin Hooper, right? Jared Cook out here. Oh man, it got ugly really fast. I was really hoping that Tyler Higbee would last out there to us, and he almost made it back. He would have been the clear-cut choice, though. But if I'm looking at these players here, I'm looking at 2 of them here, right? I'm looking at Jonnu Smith from New England, and I'm looking at Rob Gronkowski for Tampa Bay, just because I think that we're going to probably end up playing the waiver wire here with this position anyways, and playing the stream, right? Playing the tight end stream throughout the entire season. So I think if I'm going to look at the guy that potentially offers me a touchdown in week 1, right, carrying that momentum from his playoff run, I don't love the pick here, Corey, but I'm going to say we grab Rob Gronkowski here with our last pick.
Sure, a week 1 stack of Brady and Gronk is not a bad call. You're just looking for a touchdown at this point. So Gronk is good. We probably wouldn't stick with him for the whole season, though. So full disclosure there.
All right, Corey, mock draft has come and gone here. I'm going to recap who we got here. Quarterback is Tom Brady. Our running backs are Aaron Jones and Chris Carson. We've got Davante Adams and Keenan Allen as our wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. Rob Gronkowski as our tight end again, stacking the Brady Gronk there. And then we've got Deontay Johnson as our flex. You look at our bench here, we went heavy on running back early. Kareem Hunt, Travis Etienne, and Ronald Jones. And we wrapped up our bench with a couple wide receivers in Antonio Brown, Mike Williams, and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, Justin, I really, really like this team and really like this exercise. So with that said, we are all wrapped up for our mock draft episode. Remember, as always, we could use your support, so please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, like. You can also find us anywhere where you can find podcasts, anything you can do to show some support. I'm Corey.
And I'm Justin.
And this has been the 4th and Long Fantasy Football Show. We will see you next time.
Royalty-free music courtesy of Ben Sound. The views and opinions expressed on today's episode are that of the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. Remember to like and subscribe.